Joining me right now, Democrat of the day, is the current Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, and she is running in the primary to be the DFL nominee for governor. Lori Swanson is kind enough to spend some time with us today. Attorney General, thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, hey, Matt, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for the time today. We usually do Democrat of the Day by introducing people, but I don't have to introduce you. You've been a stellar Attorney General. I'll start there. I mean, as you get ready to end your term as Attorney General here, why don't you point to your most proud accomplishment as Attorney General? Tell us what you think that is.
The Attorney General's office is just a wonderful office. It can do incredible things to help people and make a difference in people's lives. The big corporations and special interests have armies of lawyers and lobbyists representing them, and regular people don't. And so we've been able to stand up for the people of Minnesota in so many cases, Matt, over the time that I've been Attorney General. Most recently, we secured an $890 million environmental settlement. It's 100 times bigger than the next largest settlement in Minnesota and the third biggest in the country, because a company had been putting some dangerous chemicals into the drinking water for about 50 years, and nobody had done anything about it. The legislature didn't, and these chemicals were just allowed to really sit there. And so I was able to file a lawsuit. It went on 7 years. We looked at 27 million pages of documents, 1,600 court filings, 100 judicial hearings, 200 witness depositions, and at the end of the day, got the biggest settlement in state history, and environmental settlement in state history, and we're going to put the money into cleaning up the drinking water, which not only helps people's health, but it allows their home values to be restored. And so that's an example of something that we can do. But there's been so many. We've kicked bill collectors out of hospital emergency rooms and shut down the nation's largest arbitration enterprise because it was running a rigged system where it was secretly working on behalf of the credit card and banking industry, even though it was supposed to be fairly adjudicating claims. And so it's been an incredible honor to represent the people of Minnesota as their Attorney General and going to bat for them and trying to level the playing field so that people are treated fairly.
The fact that you did not win the AG endorsement at the convention, I'm befuddled myself. I'm shocked at that, but you made the decision. Talk about that process. That was a very busy weekend for you. When the decision was you made that you weren't going to run for the AG office, talk about the metamorphosis of that to the governor's race.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the convention system is comprised of about 1,200 people, and of course the primary process is much bigger than that. It's probably about 500,000 people. And when the first ballot came back in the endorsing convention, and it sort of allowed me to really step back and evaluate my options and try to reflect on how can I best serve Minnesota. And so I did that over that weekend. I, really thought about in what way can I best serve the state of Minnesota. And we live in a time of so much gridlock and partisanship and things not getting done that ought to be getting done for people. We see it in Washington, we see it in St. Paul, and I ultimately concluded that I can best serve the public as governor. There are so many issues we need to address. I want to make sure people have a decent shot at a good job that can pay their bills, and that people can have a pension that gives them a dignified retirement, and that healthcare costs aren't bankrupting families, and that our kids can get a good and decent education at an affordable price. And these are the kind of values that my running mate, Rick Nolan, shares. And so Rick and I spoke and had lunch on that Sunday and had some good conversations. He's somebody that I've known for about a dozen years and have been friends with, he and his wife, Mary. And ultimately, we decided to run for governor and lieutenant governor. And I couldn't be more excited about the race and where we're at right now in the race, but also the things that we're going to be able to get done for the people of Minnesota. For example, we want to sit down with all the legislators before we even take office and figure out sort of what is their issue. Is it education? Is it health care? And try to find constructive ways to move the state forward in a way that helps people. And that's been my record as a problem solver. Rick's record is as a problem solver. And together we want to solve problems on behalf of the people in Minnesota in a way that gets progressive results that move our state forward.
Okay, I got to ask you about Rick, because
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking he was done. And he's had a great career. I mean, you can't. I thought he was done when he was going to not run for the 8th seat. Did you have to twist his arm? Is it one of those things where he was kind of wanting to get back into it and just didn't want to do the House seat? What did it, explain that interaction, that conversation a little bit more?
Yeah, Rick's really has been such a public servant. I mean, he's one of the finest members of Congress. Rick has been voted or selected as one of the 10 most effective members of Congress in a study in 2015 by Vanderbilt University and the University of Virginia. And he's just one of 24 Democrats who are on something called the Problem Solver Caucus. He's the only member of Minnesota's congressional delegation that's on this Problem Solvers Caucus. But it's basically people who in Congress who want to try to deal with some of the big issues that simply aren't getting done because of the partisanship. And so that's been Rick's career as a public servant, whether it's Congress or in the state legislature before that. He cares about people. He cares about our state. He loves our state and the finest tradition in the sense. And so as we talked about this, this is an opportunity for him to continue to serve, but also be closer to home. I think when he retired, being in Washington and being so far from home, family was a consideration. And as a member of Congress, you're traveling back and forth. And, of course, Rick living in northern Minnesota. I mean, you're talking, I suspect, probably 10 hours just to get from D.C. to back home, and that's twice a week. And here he can be home, he can be near family, but also be in a position where he can continue to serve the public. And we look at this as, perhaps the best example is kind of the Carter-Mondale example of how President Carter and Vice President Mondale governed the country during their tenure. And in this case, we've got somebody in Rick Nolan who's got an incredible amount of experience in the legislative branch, who's been one of the finest members of Congress, and very much look forward to a partnership together where we can try to tackle some of these problems.
Lori Swanson joining us once again, running for the DFL endorsement to be governor of the state of Minnesota, LoriSwanson.com. And by the way, what you just described about Rick Nolan makes a tremendous amount of sense about being here.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about bipartisanship, and part of the frustration I think a lot of Democrats are saying right now is this. Democrats for 10 years have been screaming bipartisanship. The Republicans don't care. The Republicans, you look at what Kurt Doubt and the Speaker of the House in Minnesota just did again with this session, waiting till the last minute, dirty tricks in the ag bill, trying to jam as many things in there, not letting the Democratic legislators even read the bill before they have to vote on a 1,000-page bill an hour later. This is the idea of bipartisanship is that both sides are willing to work together. And the problem I think that a lot of people like myself have is that we have a Republican Party that basically will say, sure, we'll do bipartisanship as long as you do exactly what we tell you to. Talk about working that minefield.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about the legislative session. It was an incredible disappointment. I mean, the Constitution says that you can't have multiple subjects in a bill. The idea being when the legislature debates legislation, they ought to know what they're debating, and it ought to be up and down on the merits. And when you have these 1,000-page bills, I think it is both constitutionally precarious because we have the single subject clause that says don't do that, but it also isn't good policy because it forces people to make decisions not on the issue at hand, but perhaps voting for a bill where they don't like a bunch of stuff, but they do like something in it, therefore they vote for it. We saw a lot of good things not get done at the end of session that should have gotten done. We're in the midst of an opioid epidemic. We don't have enough treatment in this state. For every $1 you spend on treatment, you save $4 in healthcare costs and $7 in criminal justice costs. Yet the opioid money that was designated to treatment kind of was left on the cutting room floor because it was put into the 1,000-page bill. Other issues, that didn't get done were, tax conformity with the changes in the federal tax laws. We have to have a conformity bill so that people aren't scrambling, filing multiple sets of tax returns, depending on whether it's with the federal or state government. So many other important issues. Senior citizens was a hugely important issue. We have problems with senior citizen abuse and how they're treated in assisted living facilities and nursing homes, and there were proposals there to do better by our senior citizens. That as well got caught up in the end of session. And so I think what we would do is try to meet early and try to involve people early. And Rick and I have indicated we're going to try to meet with every legislator, or will meet with every legislator even before we take office, by Christmas of this year and try to find out, are there places where we can have common ground where, despite having political agreements, we can move some of these things forward that we simply need to get done on behalf of the people of Minnesota.
It's interesting sometimes how the issues evolve over just a single campaign. Back when I started talking to gubernatorial candidates, we talked mainly about healthcare and education. But the reality is we have to start talking about agriculture. I mean, another big spat today by our president with China. Minnesota farmers are dependent on this trade with Canada, with China, with Mexico. We've had threats against our pork industry, our soy industry. We know wheat, sugar beets. These are all things which are on the potential chopping block when it comes to a White House that is destined to basically be authoritative in a subject they know very little about. Talk about then the role of the governor and what options you have on the table if all of a sudden we start looking at a national policy of trade that goes bad. Where does the responsibility of the governor kick in?
Yeah, so you're right. Agriculture is one of the backbones of Minnesota's economy. It's vital to the success of our state. It's an industry we need to boost and promote in every way possible. And there are many different ways to do that. One is by trying to create as much as possible state markets for agriculture. Being really a promoter of Minnesota's agricultural economy, and trying to create opportunities for trading as much as you can, and creating even state-level relationships with other countries. I've been very disappointed in how the president has been treating, some of our longest and oldest allies in many ways. The name-calling that we've seen with Australia, with Canada, with France. I mean, these are people we have fought World War II alongside of them. They were right there on, we just had the anniversary of D-Day, and these are allies who have been with this country. And yet to see, how he's treated some of our longest and dearest and oldest friends, and then how he's also treated, people who aren't our oldest and longest friends, the cozying up with Russia and so on and so forth. It has been troubling to me. And I hope that, that changes. I hope that to some extent what he's doing on agriculture is, negotiating as opposed to doing something that's going to end up hurting our farmers. And so you're right. I think the state does have a role. I've seen that in the Attorney General's office as well. When Washington doesn't do certain things or does do certain things, then the state can pick up and try to fill in the cracks. And, in my current position as Attorney General, we've seen some things out of Washington that have been problematic or just plain unconstitutional. For example, the executive order travel ban that came down in January, shortly after the president took office. It was improperly vetted. It was hastily rolled out. It ended up, catching within its ambit people who were lawful residents of this country. And I was one of two attorney generals who filed a lawsuit against the president to go to court and ultimately obtained a court order declaring that travel ban unconstitutional. And so I think it's, going to be important in the system that we have for Minnesota and all states to make sure they're representing their state's interests.
Lori Swanson once again joining us. One final question I wanted to bring up to you. There's a story in the Star Tribune about mental health treatment. And mental health treatment obviously is something we talk about with healthcare. It's something we talk about with gun violence in this country. It's something that is vitally important. It was an issue championed by Wellstone. And yet we have another case of insurance companies basically saying we're not going to reimburse you for the cost. Basically an insurance company who's looking at what looks to be a spreadsheet, a number sheet dictating health care. And it's obviously it's having an impact not only to the healthcare providers, the mental health care providers in this case, who are unable to pay their bills because they're not getting paid enough for the services that they provide, but at the same time just not taking care of the people that need mental health care. Talk about the struggle and the fight that coexists here, where the insurance companies are having more and more power over the healthcare market and the ripple effects of that.
Yeah, mental health care is so important that we do a better job on as a society. I mean, there are mental health parity laws that essentially say insurance companies aren't supposed to treat mental illnesses different than physical illnesses, but too often we see that they do. One of the big problems we have right now in mental health care is we simply don't have enough capacity in the system to deliver good mental health care to people who need it. And it is tied up, with the the drug epidemic. Oftentimes you see drug dependency and mental health care problems go hand in hand. You see the increase in the suicide rate. A story about a week ago, a 25% increase in the number of suicides since 1999, even higher in Minnesota. I think it was 40% increase. And we don't have the practitioners out there who, at the level we need to treat mental illness. It's especially acute for kids. Children who have, bipolar disease, who have depression, who have mental illnesses. It's very, very hard for families even to find residential facilities in Minnesota to treat those kids. So you end up having parents shipping kids with these disorders to, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, or North Dakota, or out of state. And that does a couple of things. One, it ends up typically delaying their treatment. But two, it means that families are split at a time when, children most need familial support. And so, what I'd like to really do, you heard of Joe Biden's moonshot on cancer. I think in Minnesota, we need to have a moonshot on mental health and really focus on, making sure we have the infrastructure, the payments there where you can see, practitioners in the mental health area. To a degree in healthcare, you so often see the dollars follow the money. And so, you see money going to, heart facilities because you have a lot of aging baby boomers, or to orthopedics, but we don't see the kind of resources going into mental health care. And it does, as I talk to, judges, I'll ask them oftentimes, what percentage of kids in juvenile court do you think have untreated and undiagnosed mental illness or chemical dependency? And usually the answer I get back is 90% or more have it. And so I think it's something that is we need to deal with. And as governor, I very much want to be involved in dealing with it, both in terms of the insurance companies, but also in terms of just having supply in the system to treat people who need help very desperately.
Lori Swanson, once again, current Attorney General, running for the DFL nomination to be governor. The primary comes up here in August. LoriSwanson.com. That's the website if anyone needs information on yours and Mr. Nolan's campaign, correct?
Yes, that is correct, Matt.
All righty. LoriSwanson.com. I mean, obviously, volunteers, donations needed. If you can help out, if you'd like more information, you can go there by all means. Attorney General, I can't tell you what it's a joy it's been to have you as our Attorney General. You've been fantastic in my mind. All my best in the primary, and good luck, and we'll see how the rest of the summer goes.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate you having me, and thanks for all you do as well.
Thank you very much. Lori Swanson, Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Bye-bye.